Can I start?
Yes, sir, you can.
Right, okay. Good morning to everybody. I'm starting on a very fundamental subject because more often mistakes are made at the fundamental level, it becomes very expensive and costly in the examination. So let me start with something which at undergraduate level is taken for granted, and at PG level, people sometimes make these mistakes. First, I would like to start with, before I go to swelling, there are 4 questions that need to be asked in a person history, which people quite often forget. These are very, very important. Number 1, history of allergy. You have to ask every patient that comes to you, history of allergy. If he's allergic to either drug or something else, please make a note in the case sheet very prominently so that the drug will not be administered. Second is, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me, please?
Yes, sir. Clear,
Okay.
clear and loud.
Okay. Number 2, history of previous surgery. Especially in true of thyroid, where the scar may look like a skin crease. I'm not talking the modern robotic, but the traditional one. Unless the patient extends the neck, that scar may be mistaken for a skin crease. So elsewhere, previous surgery may be relevant, may not be relevant, but it must be noted. Third is history of previous medication. This is more and more important because we are the diabetic capital of the world. So you have to ask the patient in detail about all the medication that the patient takes. Last question is something which is necessary in a small group of patients. These are ladies who are in the reproductive phase of their life. You have to ask them LMP. It's only the gynecologist who do it, but surgeons must ask because there are certain drugs that are contraindicated in early pregnancy. And these are days of litigation. So therefore, you prescribe some drug and the lady becomes pregnant, and unfortunately there's some...
Sir, I have a request, sir. Can you switch your camera on so we can see you?
Okay, right.
Can I ask Dr. Subha to switch the
Yes,
camera
Suma
on?
is helping me out. Yes, correct. Right, can they see me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right, fine.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
this last point I stress again, ladies a reproductive age group, you must ask them about LMP because certain drugs are contraindicated. Now I come to examination of swelling. Everybody knows, start with the number. I wanted to ask one of the PG if somebody's around. If you find multiple swellings, how do you know they're lymph nodes? Can somebody answer this question, please? How do you say you find some swellings in the neck? What makes you feel they are lymph nodes? Otherwise, I'll give the answer.
Yeah, Narayana Chandra, you want to answer the question?
These are simple questions I'm asking. You find multiple swellings in the neck. What makes you feel they are lymph nodes?
Anyone who wants to answer, please unmute your mic and then answer the question.
Sir, this is if we find it based on the consistency and.
Sorry, madam. Consistency has nothing to do with saying it's a lymph node. What's your concept? Huh? Answer is very simple. Number 1, you look at the site where lymph nodes are commonly situated. Suppose you find a swelling of the dorsum of the forearm. Will you think of a lymph node? You think of a lymph node when it's in the axilla, neck, groin, etc. Second point is they are round or oval in shape. Enlarged lymph nodes. Normal lymph node, please remember, we learned in anatomy a long time ago, they're kidney shaped. That hilum is lost and becomes round. So you find most important point is site. And second is the size and the shape. Those tell you that the problem is more difficult and single. Multiple is easy. Understand? Consistency has nothing to do with that because you have soft lymph nodes in papillary carcinoma. You've got hard lymph nodes in squamous cell carcinoma. You get cold abscess in tubercular lymph node. So consistency has nothing to do, say, that's a lymph node. Understand? So when it's single, it can pose a little problem, right? Then the next thing is we go by traditional site, size, shape, surface, all those things are known. When you describe the surface, you've got to use terms which are conventionally used. And they are, surface can be smooth, can be lobular, can be granular, can be irregular. Smooth swelling, hydrocele is a common example. Lobular, lipoma is classical lobular swelling. Nodular, you have a lot of lymph nodes. Thyroid is a classical example. Granular, I'm told, some of the cirrhotic liver, the macronodular liver, they feel granular. Irregular, most malignant swellings. You cannot use any other word to describe the surface. Understand that? Then the margin, the more superficial the swelling is, easier to make the margin. Deeper swellings, margins are difficult to make out. Size and shape are, of course, shape is only either spherical or ovoid. You cannot use any other term, otherwise irregular. More important, I come to consistency and palpation. Number one, I'm sorry, inspection, there's one sign, there's a photograph of a newborn infant here. People take for granted that the moment you see some veins, they must be a dilated vein, there must be something wrong. Please remember at two sides, the veins become prominent under where there is no hypervascularity. One is the scrotum, when the skin is stretched out, the veins become prominent. Second is the newborn infants. You can see those veins, prominent veins. They are not abnormal because the skin is stretched, the veins become visible. Understand? So we go on to palpation. I have a sign which is not available in textbook. See, please remember, more often than not, you're told to use the back of the fingers to make out warmth. But when the swelling is easily accessible, as seen in the photograph, you will find that the palm of the hand absorbs the heat much better. And therefore, this is a sign which is not available in any textbook. I have found it extremely useful. This can be used only when the swelling is easily accessible. Understand? Not otherwise. So you keep the palm of the hand in contact with the swelling for about a few seconds. The transference of heat from the swelling to the palm is much better appreciated than the dorsum of the finger as they described in books. Understand? Basically, a swelling, the diagnosis depends upon three things. Number one, consistency. What are they? Terms are soft, firm, and hard. Of course, you can add on so many further adjectives, stony hard, bony hard, ebony hard. Those are all again same. And again, words like rubbery consistency, all that adjectives to be added. Basically, make up your mind, soft, firm, or hard. Understand? And then we go on to two most importantly, mobility and anatomical plane. Anatomical plane, unless you know the anatomy, you will never be able to make out the anatomical plane. See, skin swellings and bony swellings are easy, but the problem comes with subcutaneous swellings and the swellings which are either in the muscle or deep in the muscle. Textbooks will tell you very easy, put the muscle on contraction, find out what happens to the swelling, but in practice, it can pose a lot of practical problems. Now, putting the muscles on contraction, there are three basic methods. Number one, you know the muscle and you know how to put the muscle on contraction against resistance. Classical example is biceps or vastae, whichever muscle in the limbs. It's very easy. You can put the muscle in contraction, you provide the resistance and see what happens to the mobility, what happens to the size of swelling. Mobility becomes less and the size also becomes less. You know, it's deep. Mobility becomes less, but even more prominent probably in the muscle. Mobility remains the same, it's subcutaneous. Easier said than done in practice. Understand that? The second method of putting resistance is to get the patient to do it himself or herself. One example is breast. You ask the patient to keep his hand on the hip and at the elbow being flexed. Now what happens is the pectoralis major is put on contraction and you find out what happens to mobility as far as the breast swelling is concerned. The other side where the patient is made to do the contraction is masseter. You ask the patient to clench the teeth, the masseter is put in contraction. In parotid swellings, it becomes prominent. The third method is to make use of gravity. That is the head raising test or the leg raising test. Please remember, it is better to use the word lower limb raising test and not the leg. The whole lower limbs have to be raised and the abdominal muscles are put on contraction and it becomes a more important hernia, but elsewhere also it's equally important. So these are two things which will, once you get the consistency, mobility, as well as anatomical plane right, chances are high you will come to a diagnosis. Absolutely no problem. Unless you learn these things, you will get into problem as far as anatomical plane, and then you go completely wrong as far as the diagnosis is concerned. Now I finish with I just want to show two more pictures just to demonstrate. Sorry. These are two swellings. Can anybody tell me? I'm sorry, it's written there. Please remember, ectopic cellular gland tumors have much more chances of becoming malignant. On the other side, you have a recurrent swelling arising from the sweat gland. These are uncommon tumors arising from the skin. With this description, I go on to the ulcer. Now, can somebody define the ulcer for me? Let me start with the beginning. Can any postgraduate kindly define an ulcer for me?
Break in the continuity of epithelium.
Exactly. This is exactly what I expected. Now, you know, ophthalmologists use a laser knife as far as their cataract surgery is concerned. They have caused a break in the epithelium of the conjunctiva. Would you call it an ulcer? I want one more PG. I want one more PG to improve upon the. Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
I
Pawan.
always believe. Yes.
Sir, it is a discontinuation in the skin or
Yeah,
mucous
exactly.
membrane.
That's what I said. When you say skin lining, mucous membrane makes no difference. When an ophthalmologist makes an incision with a laser knife, he has caused a discontinuity of the epithelium. Agreed? The boy who answered the question, agreed? Has the ophthalmic surgeon produced an ulcer?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, this is what I hear again and again, but you have got to add one more keyword. Now you realize why I started with ulcer and swelling. Unless there is tissue loss, you will not call it an ulcer. A breach in the continuity of the lining epithelium, whether it's in the skin or mucous membrane, even lining of the bladder epithelium, anywhere, when there's a lining epithelium, you can get an ulcer. Please remember, a breach in the continuity is only a partial definition, which does not satisfy a postgraduate examiner. You may get away with MBBS level, but you will not get away with MS level if examiners are like me, who depend only on fundamentals and not as something very recent, very new. So you have to know that there must be tissue loss. When you see an ulcer over that area, there has been loss of skin. Agreed? There's loss of subcutaneous tissue, maybe loss of, depending upon the depth of the ulcer, there is significant tissue loss. So without tissue loss, don't ever complete a definition of an ulcer. So breach in the epithelium with tissue loss is what you have to know as far as definition ulcer, right? Now, inspection of an ulcer, there's a very important point. Please remember, the floor of an ulcer is what is visible. I'm going straight away to a malignant ulcer. There are two distinct types of floor which you have to know. Can anybody, show the pictures to you, will you tell me the names of these? The first picture and the second picture. They're two different, both are malignant. Can anybody tell me? Come on. Somehow I feel learning should be fun. If I could see your face and your reactions, I should be much more happy. Always believe that learning must be fun, otherwise you'll never remember it. Quick, time is at premium. Yes, please. Come on, Mr. Mayur, come on, tell me. What term would you use to describe the first one? We are talking only about the floor. I'll come to edge later. What term? Mayur, your time is over. Sorry, I was a quiz master for a long time. Your time is out. Over. These are rapid fire. Anybody else?
Rahul Nambiar.
Come on, quick. I want, this must be an interactive session. I'm sorry. I wish I could see the face of more students. I feel happy. Come on. The terms to use, see, when you remember, I'll come to raised edges later. When you look at the floor, more often than not, the next picture shows is better. More often than not, the floor is raised in relation to the surrounding area. These ulcers are called proliferative ulcer. Do not use the word ulcerated swelling. I had this experience at postgraduate level. You use the word ulcerated swelling when, suppose there's a large fibroadenoma, soft especially. Overlying skin undergoes necrosis. It's because of pressure. The stretching of the skin, the blood supply is lost, and then you find that there's an ulcer area of skin loss. That is an ulcerated swelling. What you see in this picture is called as a proliferative ulcer, where the tissue is, the floor is raised in relation to the surrounding skin. Whereas the previous picture, the floor is at the lower level. These are called excavating ulcers. Now, does it have any prognostic significance? Mayur again, I can see a picture on the iPad. There are two patients, the first one, second one, who will have better prognosis and why? You should answer this. I'm sorry, I posed it, you should answer this question. Come on, we have time.
Ranjit, you can answer.
If nobody's given the answer,
Proliferative ones.
good, very good. Yes, Missy, come on, tell me.
Apeksha, you want to put a camera on? Yeah, say.
Tell me,
Proliferative ones, sir.
has a better prognosis. Why? Why?
Sir, because it has not invaded deep into the tissues, so we can get a clear margin.
My dear girl, you mean to say this is not infiltrated? This is also infiltrated.
No, sir, it is not that deep.
Exactly. When the floor is excavating, the degree of extension of the malignant, very good, good answer. It is much more than what you see in a proliferative ulcer. This is something which you should remember. So when you describe the floor of an ulcer, you should specify. I may not talk about oral cancer, but tell me one site in the oral cavity where excavating ulcers are most common, to the extent that it has got a prefix which is associated with our country. I've given a clue. Sorry, I'm acting like a quiz master, but it doesn't matter. I've given a clue. Come on. One site in the oral cavity where excavating ulcers are the most common type, and is the prefix associated name of our own country. These are basics. The previous lecture about some very, very modern thing, and I am come down not only to the ground, I have gone underground probably as far as postgraduate teaching is concerned. We are at the foundation. That's what the reason I have taken this up. Unless the foundation is strong, we'll go on committing mistakes. 1 more minute, I'll give. Apeksha, come on, you're the girl who answered the previous question. Answer this question.
Yes, Saeed.
Yes, Saeed is coming up. Good, very good. Come on. I want this to be interactive, please. I'm sorry, I don't know, my reputation has made these people.
I think so, sir. Everybody's scared. There are 140 people, 140, but not even one is venturing.
Because they're scared of me. You have put such a bad reputation for me. That's the reason. I think Dr. Radhakrishnan is to be blamed for all this.
No, sir.
They are not bold enough to talk to me.
Yeah, really. Archa, you can take a call. Archa Todapilli.
Come on, please.
Anyone? Meghna, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, try. Madam,
take hands, Meghna.
Please remember, these are places where you must make all possible mistakes so that you won't commit the same mistake in the exam. I told you, learning must be fun. Quick. There's one Dr. Shashank coming up. Okay, Shashank, I can't see your face, doesn't matter. Answer the question.
Yes, Shashank.
Okay, Shashank, time is at a premium. Onya, when a cancer occurs in the gingiolabial sulcus, where our people have got a habit of keeping that tobacco concerned pan for hours together, is the place where you invariably get an excavating type of ulcer. And this is known, I'm sure your teachers have taught you, this is the notorious Indian oral cancer. Because It's only Indian, it's subcontinent, but somehow India got a dubious distinction added because these people keep that tobacco, pan mixture, etc. in that area for hours together. And that's the India-owned cancer invariably is excavating. That's the reason I'm stressing this point. So when you describe a floor of a malignant ulcer, make sure you use the term either excavating or proliferative. Of course, proliferative is what you see. There is a cauliflower, so many other descriptions are given. Excavating is something you should know. Now, can anybody tell me why the edges of a malignant ulcer are always raised?
Because the edges are more active,
Because
so that the more action at the edges, sir.
more action, I think, yeah, I can understand you. What you're trying to tell me that cells are multiplied at a much rapid rate compared to the surrounding. Is that
Yes, sir,
the
yes, sir.
answer?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Okay. Then can there be a malignancy without raised edges?
Yes, sir. It is possible, sir.
When?
Basal cell carcinomas.
Basal cell, what type of edges you get, brother?
Undermined.
Huh? What is the basal classification of an edge of a basal cell carcinoma? What's the term used?
Rolled out edges.
I didn't hear. Two people are talking simultaneously. Good, very good. Come
Beaded
on.
appearance.
Beaded appearance.
Beaded rolled out edges.
Hang on. Are the beads raised or not?
Yes, sir, raised.
Then you are the person who said, see, remember when you have a chronic ulcer, which becomes malignant, all around you may not find raised edges unless you take extreme care. Can you give me an example? A chronic ulcer.
Melanoma.
Oh no, melanoma. Madam, you're far away from that.
Marjolines ulcer.
Marjolines ulcer has raised edges. No, chronic venous ulcers in this country, secondary to varicosity, are neglected. You know why? Patient has been having this ulcer for years and years together. He goes to hospital, somebody puts a split skin graft, the ulcer heals, he comes back. Let us say he's a barber. He stands from morning to evening working on his clients, and the skin breaks down, the ulcer comes back. And he has been so used to this kind of recurrent ulcers that when it becomes malignant, he doesn't bother. When you examine the patient, unless you look at it carefully, in one particular site it may be raised, rest of it may be still sloping. So raised edges are important, but you must take a little extra care when you examine a chronic venous ulcer which has become malignant. Understand that melanomas are a totally different kettle of fish. If possible, we'll discuss it a later date. And the other answer was what? My vessel, of course, is out of question. Marjolines ulcer. Now, there's a misconception of Marjolines ulcer. What is it? The regional lymph nodes are not palpable, right? Oh, there's a lady who is appearing on the scene. Very good, Missy. Come on, answer the question. There's a surgical axiom, which is, of course, Mayur wants to come back. Okay, Mayur, come on.
Sir, some melanomas have palpable lymph nodes.
No, I'm not talking melanoma. Melanoma needs a full discussion, young man. I'm asking about a Marjolines ulcer. What is a surgical
Don't know.
misguided statement? I'm sorry to use the word. Misguided statement about Marjolines ulcer.
No, sir. Sorry, sir.
Okay, right, lady. Keeping quiet. Silence is not always golden, Missy.
It's a squamous cell carcinoma with no lymph node. Regional lymph node is not involved in that.
Very good. Is that always true? Right, 50% right. You'll pass the exam. 50% right. But I want to give you more marks. You're right. Until the tumor is restricted to the scar area. Understand that? Please remember, once a basal cell carcinoma spreads beyond the scar, it behaves like any other squamous cell and it has a propensity to spread to the lymph nodes. Because some of these, unfortunately, certain terms catch your attention and you focus on that. There's the other point I wanted to make in this session. One is what is called as tangential thinking. You pick up one or two physical findings and focus your entire story around that. Never do that. I may look a little adultish, but I'll give a simple example. When you look at Deepika Padukone, you won't look at a little to say that she's beautiful. Am I right? Am I right? Okay. Now, as postgraduates, you have to develop one. It's not easy. It's extremely difficult, but you have to practice it. Unless you get the total picture, don't think of the diagnosis. You hear the story first, you examine the patient next, and at the end of which, you look at all the entire picture. And then only you think of diagnosis. More often than that, what happens in the exam? The girls are in this particular case more vulnerable. The devil will come and whisper into your ear the diagnosis. Of course, luckily we have a lot of lady staff members in the college where I worked, and the boys also used to get a lot of clues. Okay, anyhow, once you get the diagnosis, you become a horse with blinkers on. You have only one diagnosis to offer. I'll give a simple example of this instance. There's a patient with bilateral hydronephrosis. He had a bilateral palpable swelling. I'm sorry, she had a lower midline scar. Okay, what's the diagnosis? Lower midline scar, bilateral kidney swellings. I'm sorry, not bilateral, bilateral kidney swellings. What's the diagnosis? Both are big, palpable, surface is lobular, she's asymptomatic, and the swelling was identified, and then this is MS long case. Come on, tell me. Lower midline scar, bilateral kidney swellings. I'm sorry, this is the way I teach. We move from topic to topic. It's not like, go by one straight line. Yes, quick. Possessed minds must learn to work fast. The first thing that, yes, there's one Tota, come on, please. Come on.
Bilateral hydronephrosis.
Very good. Yes, that's a diagnosis. Absolutely right. Now, this gentleman was told that it's a polycystic kidney before he entered the exam hall. And he offered only one diagnosis. Three times as alternative. Surely, why does it cause hydronephrosis? Tota, please.
Because she had underwent. Because she had underwent she might have undergone some lower midline surgery in which both.
What operation?
Hysterectomy, sir.
Exactly. Abdominal hysterectomy. And what happens?
Abdominal hysterectomy.
What happens?
Ureteric injury.
Ureteric. Suppose you tie the ureter, what happens to the kidney? Let us say, as an experimental base, you tie the kidney. What happens to tie the ureter? What happens?
Hydroureteronephrosis.
Always? Is there any other possibility? Come on, quick.
Ureter may first try to propel the urine forward, sir.
I didn't hear. Okay, right. So the example I gave to make sure that when you enter the exam hall, don't have a fixed mind. Don't ever think of the diagnosis until you complete your examination. Understand? Now we move on with the ulcer. I just want to show one sign which is not so here comes a point. Many clinical books tell you that edge is a sign of inspection. Somehow beg to differ. Edge is a palpatory sign. Understand that? The sloping, I'm trying to demonstrate a sloping edge in this patient. You have to start the surrounding skin and then go down towards the floor, and then you get a sloping edge. What does a sloping edge indicate? I'm talking MBBS things today. I have not gone to MS at all. I feel sorry.
Healing ulcer.
Yes, why does the healing ulcer show a sloping edge? Why does
epithelium starts progress?
Yes, please.
Epithelium starts progress.
I didn't hear. Is the migration of epithelium from the skin towards the floor. Understand that? That's why the healing occurs is from the edges. And then what happens? There's something very interesting happens. When the entire raw area is covered, see, please remember, ulcers used to heal before plastic surgeons came on the, due apologies to the plastic surgeon in the audience. Ulcers in animals were rarely grafted in the days gone by. Now we have veterinary surgeons who do skin graft. But ulcers used to heal before surgeons came on the scene. And even the largest of ulcers used to heal. It may take months or years. So what happens is the surrounding epithelium starts migrating. But when the complete raw area is covered, what happens? Why don't you get thick skin in the real sense of the word? Why don't the epithelial cells continue to multiply? Basic principle you must know. What stops them from multiplying and producing a thick scar, which occurs in a small number? There's a different story. I won't talk about hypertrophic scars, keloids, etc. in this sitting. Can anybody give the answer? Once the ulcer has completely, the raw is covered, you find that further multiplication of epithelial cells does not take place. Why does it occur? What is the nature mechanism of stopping further proliferation of epithelia? Quick. All are basics. Not a single MS level question.
Fibroblast must have.
Epithelial cells. Don't bring in fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are responsible for contraction. That's a different phase of wound healing. I'm happy at least I could see your face. Maybe the answer is wrong, or it doesn't matter. It's nice to see. Fibroblasts are responsible for contraction. That comes at a different stage of wound healing. I'm talking epithelial covering only. Come on. Quick. I didn't hear. Process what's called as contact inhibition. When these epithelial cells come in contact with the neighboring epithelial cell, nature tells them enough is enough. We will not proliferate further. Understand that? This process is called contact inhibition. And therefore, further proliferation of skin cells do not take place. Right. Now we come to one more picture, and this should not be done. This the reason I'm putting this picture is, don't kindly ask for an artery force in the exam to demonstrate a, come on, what are you saying? MBBS. MBBS. What are you saying in the picture?
Tubercular ulcer.
Absolutely right. Very good. What do you call? What's the term used? What is the type of edge?
Undermined edges, sir.
Very good. Excellent. Why does undermining take place in tuberculosis?
So because the proliferation of the tubercular cells, they go.
Yes,
the destruction of the destruction of the tissues takes place more at the edges than on the skin. Subcutaneous tissue takes more.
By subcutaneous. In other words, the skin is spared and the tuberculosis process spreads much more in the underlying layer. Why? Why? You got the answer. If you analyze your own answer, you get the next question also being answered. What does subcutaneous tissue consist of? Loose areolar tissue. So bacteria find it much easier to spread far and wide under the skin. And therefore the skin destruction, as you rightly said, is less than compared to the deeper layers. Understand that? So how do you demonstrate? In the exam, I said, don't ever ask for artery forces. You'll fail that time. Next time when you come back, the examiner will say, this is the girl who asked for artery forces last time. So don't do that. Come on. How do you demonstrate without an artery force that the edges are? Because examiner, and yes, please, Mayur, I'm happy. Mayur, you're
sir, by palpation, we can say that this skin is different than other.
Obviously, as palpatory sign, you can't make it undermining on inspection. Palpation is a method of finding out undermined edge. How? You try to try to move away the skin. You find the skin, you can just try to pull it apart, and then you see more of the granulation tissue underlying. Understand that? What's the type of granulation tissue you get in tuberculosis? How is it described? What's classical? What's the type of discharge? This is something very important. Tubercular ulcers, you see them. There's a term used to describe the floor. There's a term used to describe the discharge. Both must be known, and he is known at even MBBS level. I want Mayur, come on, you are the most active person today. I'm very happy. Quick. Classically, granulation tissue in tuberculous ulcers are pale. Now tell me the answer. Pale.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, sir. Serous candy.
What is scanty? What is the prominent or most important difference or feature of a chronic inflammation? The lady used the term some time ago, which I didn't agree.
Duration.
There's much more fibroblastic proliferation, therefore the quantum of blood vessels.
Fibrosis.
Usually granulation tissue, you think of only the multiplication of blood vessels in the process of healing. Tuberculosis is a chronic inflammation. Degree of fibrosis makes the vascularity comparatively less. Therefore, the granulation tissue is pale and watery discharge. Please remember, caseous tissue is seen within the lymph nodes. What is caseation? What's the process that leads to caseation? Okay, I'll put the question another way. What type of necrosis is this called?
Caseous necrosis.
My dear girl, your answer. This is classical. I use the word caseous. You said caseous necrosis. Good, very good. At least you're attempting. Good. Bala Murugan is a new face. Come on, quick.
Liquefaction necrosis.
Where?
Coagulative necrosis.
What necrosis?
Coagulative necrosis.
Absolutely right. Coagulative necrosis. Why does it occur? What do tubercular bacteria do, Baba? Okay, now we'll just go on.
Tubercular bacteria causes chronic.
Right. Now, when you look at a slide.
Tubercular bacteria causes chronic inflammation.
Good, very good. Right, you are. And it's called coagulative necrosis. That's the type of necrosis. Right. Now, tell me, why is these bacilli called acid fast? You'll agree that all have been MBBS questions. Tell me, why do you call acid fast, tubercle bacilli acid fast?
Because of mycolic acid.
Mycolic acid. Mycolic acid. What does it do? Okay.
Because they retain the color of the stain after the acid wash during preparation.
That's the question I'm asking, madam. Why does it retain the color? What prevents the color from getting into the getting out of the bacteria? It's a fatty envelope that surrounds the acid fast bacillus. I don't know. Your microbiology seems to be 7 years or 8 years old, I think. Right. Now tell me the cell which helps you to diagnose a tuberculous lesion anywhere in the body. These cells.
Langerhans.
Not say acid fast bacilli at all. Yes? Anna, come on, open your mouth.
Langerhans.
Langerhans, this is exactly the answer. I don't know how. You know, there seems to be a pan-Indian effect as far as wrong answers are concerned. I've still not been able to make out what the reason.
Epithelioid cells.
Yes, please.
Epithelioid cells.
Right. Do not, the presence of Langerhans cell is only a foreign body giant cell. There's not diagnostic acid epithelioid cell. What are epithelioid cells? Come on, explain. What are epithelioid cells?
They are the differentiated macrophages cells, which are slipper-shaped.
Okay, right. They resemble epithelial, but that's part of the answer. What makes a macrophage look like an epithelial cell? That's why it's called epithelioid. You understand the question? The word epithelioid is used because they have appearance is that of an epithelial cell. What is responsible for changing a macrophage into an epithelioid cell? You're right, absolutely right. I'm happy because common answer I get is Langerhans, which is just a non-specific foreign body giant cell. Quick. I got one more question ready in my mind. Anybody? And yeah, I'm happy that my class is worth it. Many people must have been wondering, why is this old man talking of ulcers and swellings when we are looking at laparoscopic gastrectomies and all sophisticated, and only yesterday they did some reimplantation of forearm in PGI Chandigarh. Quick. Hang on, we got Raksha, come on, Raksha, come on. You're on the screen. Bala Murugan, open your mouth, there's an HP. I want
macrophages.
Beg your pardon?
They look like macrophages.
My dear boy, we start with macrophages, moved on epithelium. You come back again to macrophages. I agree, they're tissue macrophages. And they appear like epithelioid cell because of
Loss of food process.
You know, I always say postgraduates are the most imaginative minds ever that can be seen in this world. Their imagination flies really far and wide. Anyway, it's good, anyway, it's bad. Anyhow, the answer is the fatty coat of the acid fast bacillus gets dissolved in the cytoplasm. Therefore, the cytoplasm comes to a seminal epithelioid cell. Agreed? That is the answer. Now, I use the word foreign body giant cell. What's the other type of giant cell you're aware of? Come on, quick.
Sir, Langerhans giant cells and foreign body type giant cells.
I give the answer. Langerhans is a classical example. What are Langerhans cells? They're giant cells. What are giant cells? How do you differentiate giant cell under the microscope? Come on. How do you know a particular part of the, when you see, how do you identify a giant cell? Let us move on to basics.
More than 100 nuclei.
100, why? 99 is not a giant cell, huh? My dear boy, multinucleate is a better answer. You say 100, you will get banged in the examination. Multinucleated cells are called giant cells. So now we have foreign body giant cell. What are the type of giant cells you are aware of?
Osteoclast.
Yeah, you are right, but then the term is wrong. PG, you have to use specific terms.
Pathological.
Tumor giant cells, my dear girl. So you got to identify tumor giant. You're right. Osteosarcoma is a classical example of tumor giant cells. But foreign body giant cells you see around foreign bodies, not necessarily in tuberculosis. Understand that? So therefore, next is again the anatomical plane. As we discussed with the swelling, you have to identify the anatomical plane. Right. Now, just out of curiosity, I want the definition of sinus and a fistula. What's a sinus? What's a fistula?
Two opening is fistula is two opening. Sinus is a blind ending opening.
Fistula is an abnormal connection between two epithelial surfaces. Abnormal connection between two epithelial surfaces.
Which one? Sinus?
Fistula.
Fistula, abnormal connection between
two epithelial surfaces.
Two epithelial surfaces. Example?
Intracutaneous fistula.
Okay, fine. What's a sinus?
Sinus is a blind ending epithelial tract.
There's a key word missing from your definition, my dear.
It's lined by epithelium.
Lined by epithelium, always. Operate. Tubercular sinus.
Can be lined by granulation.
Lined by granulation. Huh? A blind track is the word you have to use. Understand? A blind track that leads to an opening in the skin is a sinus. Understand? Right. Now, before that, I should ask a question right at the beginning. Now, we have about 5 minutes to go. Anyhow, can you tell me the definition? What's the swelling? I should have started with that. Doesn't matter. Sometime during the day. Define swelling. Define a swelling. Quick.
Any protrusion.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Abnormal. What, Meghana? New name?
Any abnormal
Kiran, new
protrusion
name?
from the skin or the mucous membrane.
We have bully body. There are 3 names coming up.
Swelling.
It's a swelling. I want a definition of swelling.
It is a vague term which denotes an enlargement or protuberance in the body.
Enlargement of? Enlargement. In a hernia, what is enlarged?
Sir,
Hello?
swelling is a vague term which denotes any enlargement or protuberance in the body.
Enlargement is not the word. I'm sorry. At postgraduate level, you have got to learn to use specific words without which the examiners will not be happy. What to do? Examiners also come in different shapes and sizes. You can't help it. Quick. You're part of it, right? Somebody give the answer, then quietly disappear.
Increase in size or change the shape of.
Swelling is defined as a protuberance in the body.
Very good. But you've got to add on one more at a postgraduate level, which is made out on
Size.
clinical examination. Remember, the word swelling is used only for clinical examination. An ultrasoundologist or MRI fellow will never use the word swelling. Understand what I mean? An abnormal protrusion which is made out on clinical examination is swelling. What's a mass? What's a lump? What's a mass? What's a lump?
Lump is a vague mass of body tissue.
Lump is a
Vague mass of body tissue.
vague mass. So when you feel a swelling, something the breast is vague, is it? You can make out the border so well. I can understand deep in the abdomen it can be vague, but in a palpable thyroid swelling, it just is so easily palpable, is no longer vague. Remember, lump, mass, and swelling ultimately mean the same. To make your life more miserable, unfortunately, certain conventions have been started. I blame the people who started and not you. The word lump is used most often in the breast and the abdomen. Understand what I mean? You don't. More often than not, what is visible on inspection, also palpable, people tend to use the word swelling. If you say there is a mass in the neck, people cannot fail you, but then the word used is swelling. The word mass is used more often in the abdomen. Lump is used more often in the breast. Ultimately, they are all same, making your life more miserable. Now, I'll give you 5 minutes. If you've got any questions to ask, please ask regarding swelling and ulcers. I stress again, unless your anatomy knowledge is good, you'll find difficulty in trying to find out the anatomical plane. So often I have seen people give the description of swelling beautifully well. The moment I ask them, tell me, did you put the muscle on contraction? Half the time they won't know which muscle. Rest of the time they won't know how to put the muscle on contraction. I repeat again, you can put the muscle on contraction by 3 methods. Number 1, make you yourself will provide contraction. You can make gravity, especially for the abdomen. You can get the patient to do it in the breast and the masseter in relation to parotid. I'm repeating that again. But those things you got to learn how to put the muscle. Of course, all the pictures are given in the books, but unless you practice it, you'll get in trouble. Now, 5 more minutes we have. Just to, if you have got any doubt, any questions, please ask me.
Hello.
Welcome, Sridhar sir. You have any comments to make?
No, I can't. I'm a student. I only would like to add one thing.
Yeah, please.
Possibly, examination of the swelling in a tongue. We would like to examine it with the tongue inside first.
Good.
So that
Really
it is
good.
not put into contraction.
I know. Very good. Correct. Absolutely. I thought those things are discussed. I'm happy Sridhar is joining. Sridhar is, I'm very happy he's there. Yeah. But what are your comments on my, you thought this was too simple or was it necessary?
Sir, you are actually, I remember all this teaching when I was an undergraduate, sir.
That's
I
what
think
I said.
you didn't cross to postgraduate level today.
No, but this is a problem we face, Unfortunately, what happens today is they spend about minimum of 2 years, sometimes more, preparing for NEET. when they come back as postgraduates, you have to start from CPT again. Because that's what
I'm so happy that I joined, sir. I'm very happy to listen to you again.
That is love and affection. There is nothing to do with the content, Baba. Sridhar, that is love and affection to listen to my voice. Don't tell me stories.
If I can say something, I feel so ashamed. I'm not fit to pass even MBBS. I'll tell you. I can't answer even one of the questions. I think I had to go back and start reading different textbooks altogether.
Yeah, I'm happy to start reading ulcer and this one, swelling in the books. I'll be the happiest man. Okay, right. Dr. Radhakrishnan, can we call it a day?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you.
Tomorrow is it? Hey, hang on, Radhakrishnan.
Yes, sir.
My daughter is here. She is willing to take PPTs. And I was talking of varicose veins. Do you think it's necessary?
Yes, sir. I mean, we want to listen everything from you, sir. We want you to be on as many times as possible.
Okay, right. Okay, tomorrow what time?
No, sir. I think you must take some operative surgery sessions.
I'll come later, Baba. See, there are few topics because I just saw Santosh is talking on thyroid just now. After some time, I may talk on thyroid. Then two things I am very keen is, two or three things. One is varicose vein, other is cirrhosis, and then thoracic outlet syndrome. These are three areas which I thought I can contribute something.
So we'll come back to you. You'll come back to us with varicose veins tomorrow, same time, 1 o'clock.
Okay. My daughter says she'll get the ready. Okay.
Okay, sir.
That make matters easy for them. Right.
Thank you so much.
George Anthony is. You want to say something, George Anthony? Is on the screen.
Judge Anthony, you want to say something?
I can see his beautiful face on the screen.
Okay.
Okay. Anything to say?
They're all scared to speak in front of you for some reason, I don't know.
The cases, then it will be still better. I heard a discussion on carcinoma stomach the other day. That's the reason. I thought I spent some time on gastric outlet obstruction also, because what I heard that day, I felt disappointed. Okay. Let them prepare one answer for one question every day. I'm going to ask them a gastric outlet find out the answer for paradoxical acidosis in gastric outlet obstruction. The PGs who attended today will get the answer ready for tomorrow. Okay. Right. Meanwhile, we'll meet at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed the show. I hope people also enjoyed the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Radha Krishna, special thanks to you.
Yeah.
I'm taking a class after a period of nearly 2 years.
Now,
Okay.
tonight I had to sit and read all the definitions, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
Nice time I had. Thank you. You made my lunch taste much better now. Thank you.